A cup and a straw solved a 41-year-old murder, the Theresa Fusco case. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. It was a cold night in Long Island, December 1984. A young girl named Theresa Fusco finished her shift at Roller Castle, a popular skating rink in Lynbrook, New York. She was just 16, bright, full of energy, the kind of girl everyone loved being around. But that night, she never came home. Theresa was last seen leaving the rink around 10:30 p.m. She waved goodbye to her coworkers. Her skates were slung over her shoulder. Her smile was the last image anyone would remember. She was supposed to walk the short distance back to her house, a walk she'd made countless times. But this time, something happened. Something dark. Something evil. When Theresa didn't come home, her mother panicked. By midnight, she was calling everyone she knew. Her friends, her manager, even the police. But back then, in the 1980s, police didn't treat a missing teenager as an emergency. They said, "She's probably with friends. Give it a day." But Theresa wasn't the kind of girl to disappear. Her family knew that instantly. And when morning came, she was still gone. No call, no sign, no trace. By the next afternoon, police and volunteers scoured the area. They combed the woods near the rink, checked bus stations, questioned employees. Nothing, not a single clue, until a week later. That's when they found her. December 13th, 1984. Behind a desolate patch of woods near the skating rink, a worker spotted something strange. A shoe, then a torn piece of clothing, then what looked like a body. It was Theresa, nude, face down, her wrists tied, a cloth stuffed in her mouth. She had been raped, beaten, and strangled. The medical examiner said the attack was brutal. The killer wanted to dominate, humiliate, and silence her. Long Island was in shock. A teenager murdered in their quiet town. Parents locked their doors. Kids were afraid to walk home. Everyone wanted to know who could do something like this. Detectives immediately suspected someone from the rink. Someone who knew Theresa. Someone who knew her route home. They started interviewing staff, managers, custodians, friends. One name kept coming up: John Kogut, a young man in his 20s who worked at the rink. Quiet, a little odd, but friendly enough. He said he had seen Theresa leave that night, but he swore he had nothing to do with her death. Still, police weren't convinced. Back in the 1980s, forensic science was limited. DNA testing was just emerging. There were no databases, no genetic genealogy, so detectives relied on confessions, on hunches, on intuition and pressure. And soon, that pressure would destroy 3 lives. After hours of interrogation, police said Kogut confessed. He allegedly told them he and 2 other men, John Restivo and Dennis Halstead, had picked up Theresa, assaulted her, and dumped her body. But there was no recording, no physical evidence linking them, just words written down by detectives. All 3 men denied it. They said the police forced their confessions. But it didn't matter. In 1986, they were convicted of Theresa Fusco's murder and sentenced to decades in prison. The case was closed. Justice, it seemed, was done. But it wasn't. Over the next 2 decades, something didn't sit right. There were inconsistencies in the confessions, details that didn't match the crime scene, timelines that didn't fit, and forensic evidence, hair, blood, semen, that couldn't be tied to any of the 3 men. But it was 1984. The science just wasn't there yet. And so they sat in prison year after year while the real killer walked free. Fast forward to 2003. DNA testing had advanced. Samples from Theresa's body were re-examined. The results were shocking. None of the DNA matched the 3 convicted men. Not a single trace. The men were exonerated and released after spending 18 years in prison for a crime they didn't commit. It was one of the worst wrongful convictions in Long Island's history. The question now was, if they didn't kill Theresa, who did? For investigators, the case went cold. The original files were old. Evidence had been stored for decades. But one small piece of evidence, A sample of biological material from Theresa's body was preserved. It sat in a freezer untouched, waiting for the right technology, waiting for science to catch up, waiting for the truth. Then, in 2024, it happened. A retired detective, haunted by the case, submitted the DNA to a forensic genealogy lab. The kind that had solved cases like the Golden State Killer. They uploaded the unknown DNA into a public database, looking for relatives. And they found one, a distant match. Someone connected to a man named Richard Bilodeau. The name was unfamiliar to most of the original investigators. Bilodeau had lived near the area back in the 1980s. He was in his 20s at the time of Theresa's murder. He had a record, minor offenses, nothing major. He eventually moved out of state, started a new life, and faded from memory. But the DNA didn't lie, pointed straight to him. Detectives began surveillance. They followed him, watched his every move, and in early 2025 they got what they needed. Bilodeau threw away a cup and a straw outside a convenience store. Investigators swooped in. They collected them, sent them straight to the lab. Days later, the results came back. It was a perfect match. The DNA from Theresa's body matched the DNA on the cup and straw. After 41 long years, they had him. In October 2025, police arrested Richard Bilodeau, now in his 60s. Neighbors were stunned. He seemed normal, friendly, the kind of man who waved when he mowed his lawn. But behind that facade was a monster who had escaped justice for nearly half a century. Detectives believe he acted alone. They think he spotted Theresa leaving the rink, followed her, and attacked her in the woods. It was quick, predatory, calculated, and then he vanished, blending into the background of normal life. A ghost hiding in plain sight. Theresa's family, now decades older, finally received the news they'd waited for. The case that haunted them for a lifetime was finally solved. Tears, relief, and rage. Because while justice had come, it came too late. Too late for the 3 innocent men. Too late for Theresa's mother, who died before seeing the truth. And too late to heal the decades of pain left behind. Still, investigators called it a victory for science, for perseverance, for truth. A reminder that time doesn't erase evidence. It only waits for someone determined enough to find it. As one detective said, Theresa never got to tell us what happened, but her DNA did. The case of Theresa Fusco is more than a story of murder. It's a story about justice lost and justice found. About how technology, when used right, can rewrite history. But it also raises one haunting question. How many other killers are out there, still living ordinary lives, waiting to be caught by the smallest trace of DNA? Because sometimes, all it takes is a cup and a straw. The arrest came fast. Too fast. It was the winter of 1984, and Long Island was terrified. A teenage girl, 16-year-old Theresa Fusco, had been found dead, brutally murdered. Her body dumped behind the skating rink where she worked. The community wanted answers, and they wanted them now. Police felt the pressure. Every day, reporters asked for updates. Every night, neighbors demanded justice. And within days, detectives thought they had their suspects. But they were wrong. So very wrong. The men were young, blue-collar, average guys. John Kogut, Dennis Halstead, and John Restivo. They worked odd jobs around town. None of them had criminal records for violence. None of them had reason to kill a 16-year-old girl. But they knew the rink. And that was enough to make them targets. Police called Kogut in first. He thought it was just an interview. He didn't even bring a lawyer. Hours passed. The questions grew more intense. The tone changed. Detectives leaned in. They said things like, "You were there, John. You remember what you did. You don't want to go down alone, do you?" Kogut swore he didn't do anything. But they kept pushing, over and over, for hours, until exhaustion blurred reality. Then it happened. A confession. Or, at least that's what police said. There was no video. No audio, just a typed statement, written by detectives, signed by Kogut. It claimed he, Halstead, and Restivo picked up Theresa that night. It claimed they took her to a secluded area. that they raped her, killed her, dumped her body. A neat, horrific story. Too neat, too convenient. But in 1984, that was all prosecutors needed. A signed confession was gold. Halstead and Restivo denied it from day one. They said they weren't anywhere near Theresa that night. But the police didn't care. They arrested all three, charged them with murder. The community cheered. Finally, justice for Theresa. But the truth was far darker. Justice was nowhere to be found. The trial began in 1986. It was sensational, televised, packed with spectators. Prosecutors described the three men as monsters. They said they lured Theresa with charm, then turned on her with violence. They called the confession a roadmap to the crime. But there was a problem. Actually, many problems. First, the confession didn't match the evidence. Kogut said they strangled Theresa with their hands. The autopsy showed she was strangled with a ligature. He said they left her body on a roadside. She was found deep in the woods. He mentioned details that didn't exist. Missed details that were obvious. Sounded rehearsed or fed to him. Then came the forensic evidence. Hair, semen, blood. The lab reports didn't match any of the three men. The biological evidence pointed elsewhere. Someone unknown. But in the 1980s, science was primitive. DNA wasn't standard. They called it inconclusive. And when the defense challenged the confession, prosecutors dismissed it. They said, who would confess to something they didn't do? The jury believed them. After weeks of testimony, they delivered their verdict. Guilty. All three men were sentenced to decades in prison. The courtroom erupted. Reporters called it closure. Theresa's family wept. And three innocent men were led away in chains. Inside prison walls, the years crawled by. 18 years. 18 birthdays. 18 Christmases. Each man maintained his innocence. Each wrote letters. Each begged for someone to listen. But nobody did. Not at first. Then, in the late 1990s, something began to shift. Science. Across the country, DNA testing was revolutionizing criminal justice. Cold cases were being solved. Innocent people were being cleared. The technology that didn't exist in 1984 was now powerful, precise, undeniable. That's when a group of lawyers took notice of the Fusco case. They were from a small but determined group known as the Innocence Project. Founded by Barry Scheck and Peter Neufeld, they were changing history one DNA test at a time. And when they looked at the Fusco case, they saw red flags everywhere. They read the confession. It didn't fit. They studied the evidence. Nothing linked the men to the scene. They talked to experts. And every one of them said the same thing. This looks like a coerced confession. So they fought for new DNA testing. But Nassau County resisted. The prosecutors didn't want to reopen old wounds. They said the evidence was too old, contaminated, destroyed. But the Innocence Project persisted. They demanded testing. Finally, in the early 2000s, a judge agreed. When the results came back, they stunned everyone. The DNA recovered from Theresa's body did not belong to Kogut, Restivo, or Halstead. Not even close. It belonged to an unknown male. The science was clear. The wrong men had been convicted. In 2003, after nearly 2 decades behind bars, all 3 men were exonerated. The judge vacated their convictions. Their families wept in disbelief. Their attorneys called it a tragedy corrected, but not undone, because no amount of money, no apology, could give them back those lost years. They walked out of prison into a world that had moved on without them. Technology had changed. Friends were gone. Families broken. But they were free. For Theresa's family, the exoneration brought mixed emotions. They wanted truth. They wanted justice. But now they were left with a new question. If not them, then who? The case that was solved was suddenly cold again. The killer was still out there, and the police had no idea where to look. Years passed. The case faded from headlines. Detectives retired. Files collected dust. But somewhere that unknown DNA sat, frozen, preserved, waiting. It was a silent witness, a clue that refused to disappear. And when science evolved again, so did hope. By 2024, forensic genealogy had changed everything. It was no longer about a random match in a database. It was about finding family trees, about tracking generations through shared DNA. That's how the Golden State Killer was caught. That's how hundreds of cold cases were cracked open. And soon, that's how Theresa Fusco's would be too. A retired detective, haunted by the case, reached out to the lab. He said, "We owe her the truth." They agreed to test the sample one more time using the newest tools. The DNA was uploaded into a public genealogy database. They didn't find the killer directly, but they found a relative, a distant cousin, a breadcrumb, and that breadcrumb would lead straight to Richard Bilodeau. He was an ordinary man, a construction worker, quiet life, married, children, lived out of state. But back in 1984, he had lived just miles from the rink. He fit the profile in ways investigators didn't realize back then. And now, with a genetic match pointing in his direction, detectives had to be sure. So they followed him, watched him, waited, and one afternoon their patience paid off. Bilodeau stopped at a gas station, bought a drink, tossed the cup and straw into the trash. That was it. That was all they needed. Detectives swooped in and collected it. They sent it straight to the lab. Days later, the results were back. Perfect match. The DNA from the straw matched the DNA from Theresa's body. After 41 years, they had their killer. When they showed up at his door in October 2025, Bilodeau didn't resist. He looked confused, calm, as if he had forgotten what he'd done, as if he believed he'd gotten away with it forever. He was wrong. For the families of the wrongfully convicted men, the news was bittersweet. They had known they were innocent, but now the truth had a face. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The year was 2024. 41 years had passed since Theresa Fusco was murdered. 41 years of silence. 41 years of questions that refused to die. For decades, the case file sat in a metal cabinet inside the Nassau County Police Department. Dust-covered, forgotten, but not gone. Inside that file was a single envelope. Inside that envelope, a small tube. Inside that tube, the DNA that would one day speak louder than anyone expected. For the younger detectives, Theresa's name was just another cold case in a room full of them. But for the older ones, the veterans who remembered her face on the news, it was personal. She had been a good kid, 16 years old, worked at a roller rink, dreamed of becoming a teacher, and her murder had destroyed more than one life. It had stolen hers, it had broken her family, and it had condemned 3 innocent men. The system had failed everyone. But science? Science was about to do what justice couldn't. Detective Laura Bianchi opened the file one morning in early spring. She wasn't even alive when Theresa died, but she'd grown up in Nassau County. Her mother remembered the fear that swept through Long Island that winter. The skating rink murder, she called it. A story every parent used to warn their kids. Don't walk home alone. Laura stared at Theresa's school photo, the one that never aged. She felt something stir in her chest. A responsibility. She whispered, "Let's finish this." That's when she reached out to the forensic genealogy unit. It was a new division, part science, part detective work. The kind of unit that had caught the Golden State Killer decades after his crimes. They didn't just rely on codes or local databases. They searched family trees. They used DNA to find relatives, cousins, grandparents, distant kin. Then they built a map backward, a web of names, until the lines pointed to one person, the person whose DNA had been left behind. It was slow, painstaking, but it worked, and Detective Bianchi was ready to try. She walked the sample to the lab herself. The same DNA that had been collected from Theresa's body in 1984. It had been tested before, yes, but only for direct matches. This time, the lab would run it through forensic genealogy. The process started with a question. Could this 40-year-old DNA still be viable? The scientists weren't sure. But when they cracked the seal, the sample was pristine, untouched. A miracle, really. They extracted what they could, amplified it, ran it through the genealogical databases used by law enforcement. And then, they waited. Weeks went by, then months. Each morning, Detective Bianchi opened her email, hoping for news. Nothing. Every day, the same empty inbox. But she refused to give up. Because cold cases, they only get solved when someone refuses to move on. Then one afternoon, the message came. Subject: partial familial match located. Her heart skipped. She opened the file. It wasn't a direct hit, but it was close. A second cousin. Living in Maine. Never been to New York. But that cousin's family tree led back to Long Island in the early 1980s. That was the clue they needed. The genealogists started tracing. Generation by generation. Birth certificates, marriage records, military files. And one name kept reappearing. A man named Richard Bilodeau. He'd lived in the area at the time of Theresa's death. He was 24 back then. Worked construction. No criminal record. But he was known around the rink. Knew people who knew Theresa. It was thin, but it was enough. Detective Bianchi pulled his file. He'd moved out of state years ago. Quiet life. Married twice. Kids. Now living in New Hampshire. She stared at his old mugshot from a 1980s traffic stop. Sharp features. Cold eyes. Something about him didn't sit right. She whispered, "You've been hiding for a long time, haven't you?" The team decided to surveil him. If he was their guy, they'd need his DNA fresh, verifiable, direct. The law was clear. They couldn't just take it. They had to find it in public, abandoned, legally. So they waited. For 3 days, they followed him from work to home. He lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of town. He drove an old pickup truck. Always careful. Always routine. Then, on the 4th day, they got their chance. Bilodeau stopped at a gas station. Bought a drink. Drained it. Threw the cup and straw into the trash. Detectives moved the moment he drove off. Gloves on. Bag in hand. The cup and straw were secured. Labeled. Sealed. A simple act. A throwaway gesture. But that discarded straw carried 41 years of truth. Back at the lab, the air was tense. They knew what was at stake. If the DNA matched, this would be one of the oldest solved murders in New York history. The technician ran the sample through the system. Hours ticked by. Each second stretched like a lifetime. Finally, the results came in. 2 profiles. One from 1984. One from 2024. Identical. Perfect match. The DNA from Theresa Fusco's body belonged to Richard Bilodeau. Detective Bianchi sat in silence. Then whispered, "We found you. 41 years. Dozens of detectives. 3 wrongful convictions. And now justice." When police showed up at Bilodeau's home days later, he didn't resist. He opened the door calmly, almost like he knew this day would come. "You're Richard Bilodeau?" "Yes. We have a warrant for your arrest in connection with the murder of Theresa Fusco." His face went blank. He didn't speak. Didn't ask which Theresa. Didn't say, "You've got the wrong guy." Just silence. That silence said everything. Back at headquarters, he was booked. Fingerprints taken. Mugshot snapped. History repeating itself, only this time they had the right man. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. Headlines screamed across the country. DNA solves 41-year-old murder of Long Island teen. Forensic genealogy cracks cold case. Cup and straw lead to arrest in 1984 killing. It was front-page news. For Theresa's family, the arrest reopened every wound. Her brother, who had been just a kid when she died, said quietly, "I didn't think I'd live to see this day." Her mother, now elderly, frail, broke down when detectives told her the name. "Richard who?" she whispered. When she heard the proof, she closed her eyes and said, "I always knew the truth would come." But for the 3 men who had spent years in prison, the wrongly convicted, it was a strange kind of justice. Vindication, but also rage. John Cogat, now gray and worn, told reporters, "They took everything from us. And now they say, oops, that's not enough." Halstead and Restivo stayed silent. What could they say? The truth had come, but 20 years too late. The case of Theresa Fusco became a turning point, not just for Long Island, for the country, for every detective who ever looked at a cold case file and wondered, what if? Because what solved this case wasn't luck. It was persistence. It was science. It was the belief that truth can't be buried forever. In court, Bilodeau sat motionless as prosecutors read the charges. Murder, rape, kidnapping, all tied to the events of January 1984. He showed no emotion, no remorse. His lawyer said he planned to fight the charges. But the evidence, the DNA, was absolute. The science that didn't exist when Theresa died was now his undoing. Detective Bianchi stood at the press conference, her voice steady. "This case is proof that justice doesn't have an expiration date," she said. "No matter how much time passes, the truth leaves a trail." The cameras flashed. The room fell silent. And for a moment, everyone understood the weight of what had just happened. 41 years. That's how long Theresa Fusco's name sat in a folder marked "Cold Case." For decades of silence, of unanswered questions, of pain that never faded. But in 2024, silence met science. A discarded cup, plastic straw, trash to anyone else. But to investigators, it was the key to unlocking a mystery buried since 1984. Detectives from the Nassau County Homicide Division had been reviewing cold cases for years. Technology had advanced faster than anyone could have imagined back in the 80s. And Theresa's case, it always felt wrong. They'd convicted 3 men, John Kogut, John Restivo, and Dennis Halstead, based on a coerced confession and shaky evidence. They served nearly 20 years before DNA testing cleared them. They walked free, but Theresa's killer was still out there. Her mother had died never knowing the truth. Her family had stopped believing justice would ever come. Then, in early 2024, a detective named Michael DeLuca pulled the Fusco file again. He didn't know why. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was guilt. But when he held the crime scene photos, the fibers, the biological samples that had been saved all these years, something in him knew. We can do better now. They sent the preserved DNA to a specialized lab in Virginia. This time, it wasn't a simple DNA profile. It was forensic genealogy, the process that had caught the Golden State Killer, the process that had changed everything. Weeks later, the lab called back. They had a partial match, not to anyone in Cody's, not a criminal, but to a family line. The surname kept appearing in the database. Bilodeau. Detective DeLuca and his partner dug deeper. There was a man named Richard Bilodeau who'd lived in Long Island in the 1980s. He'd been in his 20s then, worked odd jobs near the roller rink where Theresa disappeared. And here's the chilling part, he'd never been questioned. Not once. They began surveillance quietly. Bilodeau had moved to Maine years ago. A retired carpenter. Lived alone. Neighbors described him as quiet, polite, maybe a little odd, but nothing that screamed murderer. Still, the DNA didn't lie. They just needed confirmation. So one afternoon, detectives followed him to a small diner. He ordered coffee, a sandwich. He sat alone. When he finished, he tossed his paper cup and straw into the trash. Detectives moved in seconds later. Gloves on, evidence bag ready. That cup and straw would become the single most important pieces of evidence in a 41-year-old murder. The DNA test results came back days later. And when they did, the room went silent. It was a match, 100%. The DNA on the cup and straw matched the unknown male profile from Theresa's autopsy. DeLuca stared at the paper. His hands shook. The name he'd been chasing through history, through dead leads and cold nights, finally had a face. Richard Bilodeau murdered Theresa Fusco. On October 2nd, 2025, police moved in. They arrived at Bilodeau's modest home at dawn. The sky was gray, the wind cold. He opened the door in a sweatshirt and jeans. When they said his name, his face fell. He didn't ask why they were there. He just said quietly, "I knew this day would come." Inside the interrogation room, the air was heavy. Bilodeau sat across from DeLuca, hands cuffed, staring down. "You've been hiding for 41 years, DeLuca said. "Theresa was 16. Bilodeau looked up, eyes watery but calm. "It was an accident. he whispered. "I didn't mean to kill her." That line, the line they all use. He said he'd given her a ride that night, that she'd panicked when he made advances, that things got out of hand. DeLuca didn't respond. He'd heard it too many times before, but there it was, a confession, after 41 years. When news broke, Long Island reacted like a wound reopening. People who'd grown up hearing about the Fusco case couldn't believe it. Teresa's surviving brother told reporters she finally got her justice, but it came too late. In the courtroom, Bilodeau looked small, old, gray-haired, weak, but in the eyes of the community, he was still a monster. Prosecutors detailed the horror of that night, the way Theresa had fought for her life, the way Bilodeau had dumped her body near the woods and walked away like nothing happened, and then lived his life, married, worked, slept in peace while her family never did. After the hearing, Detective DeLuca stood outside the courthouse. Reporters crowded him. Cameras flashed. "Detective, how does it feel to close a 41-year-old case?" He paused, then said quietly, "It feels like she can finally rest. 41 years. All it took was a straw, a piece of trash that changed everything. Technology had done what the system couldn't. It had given a voice back to a girl who'd been silenced in 1984. And in that moment, as the world learned her killer's name, Theresa Fusco was no longer just another cold case. She was a reminder that even after decades of darkness, justice still finds its way to the light. 41 years. That's how long it took for justice to catch up. But justice doesn't always feel the way people expect it to. When the news broke that Richard Bilodeau had been arrested for the murder of Theresa Fusco, the people of Long Island didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They stood still. Because for them, Theresa's story was never just about a crime. It was about betrayal, broken trust, lost time, and a system that had failed not once but twice. In 1985, when Theresa's body was found, police were desperate for answers. The case had shaken the small community of Lynbrook to its core. A 16-year-old girl, brutally murdered after a night at the skating rink. It didn't happen there. Not in that kind of town. So they rushed. They focused on the wrong men. They built a case around lies, confessions squeezed from exhaustion and fear. 3 innocent men lost 2 decades of their lives because of that rush. And the real killer, Bilodeau, watched it all happen. He saw their faces on the news. He watched them go to prison. He knew the truth and stayed silent. That silence lasted 41 years. When Bilodeau stood before a judge in October 2025, he looked tired. Gray hair, frail body, wrinkled hands. He didn't look like a monster, but monsters don't always wear the face you expect. As the charges were read, second-degree murder, kidnapping, sexual assault, he barely moved. No emotion, no apology, just a blank stare. When the prosecutor described how Theresa had fought for her life, Bilodeau looked down. Some in the courtroom said they saw tears. Others said they saw guilt. But most believed they saw nothing at all, because nothing he could do would ever bring her back. Theresa's surviving family members sat in the second row. Her brother, Robert, held an old photo of her. Smiling, hair feathered, that unmistakable 1980s joy in her eyes. He whispered, "You're free now, sis." That moment, small, quiet, untelevised, meant everything. For 4 decades, the Fusco family had been trapped in a nightmare that never ended. Now, finally, the monster had a name, and Theresa had peace. After the arrest, people in Lynbrook began visiting Theresa's old memorial again. Fresh flowers appeared. Candles burned late into the night. Teenagers who hadn't even been born when she vanished came to pay respects. They'd grown up hearing the story, the girl who never made it home from the rink. And now she was real again. Person. A daughter. A name that meant something. Detective Michael DeLuca, the man who reopened the case, became a quiet hero. But he never saw it that way. When reporters asked what made him go back to that old file, he said simply, "I couldn't stop thinking about her." He said every cold case represents a promise that justice doesn't expire, that time doesn't erase guilt, and that somewhere, somehow someone still remembers. Forensic genealogy has changed everything. It solved hundreds of cases once thought impossible. And Theresa's story is proof. All it took was a few preserved strands of DNA. A cup, a straw, a match in a database. Technology connected the dots that human error had missed for decades. It didn't just identify a killer, it exposed how fragile truth can be when time stands in the way. In 2026, a small plaque was added to the Lynbrook skating rink. It reads, "In memory of Theresa Fusco, 1968 to 1984. Your light was lost, but never forgotten." People still stop to read it. Parents tell their children the story. And every time the lesson echoes, never assume it's over. Because Theresa's case isn't just about tragedy. It's about what happens when science, persistence, and humanity refuse to give up. It's about a detective who believed one more test could change everything. It's about a family who waited 41 years for a knock on the door that said, "We found him." It's about justice, slow, imperfect, but still real. As Bilodeau sits in his cell today, awaiting sentencing, the world outside has changed beyond recognition. The internet, DNA databases, the very science that found him. He can't outrun time anymore. Not in this world. He once lived like he'd gotten away with it. But justice doesn't move in straight lines. Sometimes it circles back when you least expect it. In the end, Theresa Fusco's story became something more than tragedy. It became a warning, a message to every investigator, every community, every family still waiting for answers. No case is too old, no name too forgotten, and no killer, no matter how much time has passed, is ever truly safe. 41 years later, justice finally spoke. Not in screams or tears, but in quiet words, whispered through DNA and persistence. "We found you." If you're still watching this, remember, somewhere tonight another file sits on another shelf. Another name waits for justice. Another story waits to be told. And when it is, we'll be here to tell it. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.